Hey everyone, Assalamu alaikum. How we doing? What's going on? It is me, Hashim here from Clarity from Confusion. I'm deciding to take my channel in a different direction. I think the main barrier for me in terms of having consistent uploads, and this is of course to my 17 subscribers who who I care about very much, half of them, whom are my family probably. And so, what's the point of this video? I want to start focusing on the fly videos where I don't have to do as much editing like this, so I can sort of just control what's going on at the time, upload straight away. So I can just, it's no more of a barrier to entry in terms of me sharing my thoughts and whatnot. So that's number one. Number two, it'll just make it sort of open so I can pull up whatever I want. We can discuss whatever, and it lends itself well if I eventually want to start streaming or something and have these discussions live. It'll make it easier that way. So what's my intentionality with this? Well, just to take a step back, if we look at the online realm as it is today, if you look at the major content creators, you look at your KSI or your iShowSpeed or all these characters, inherently these guys, when they produce content, they are going to be ambassadors for their ideology, because that's what informs our the way we speak, what we say, our behavior, etc., etc. And so what is their ideology really? Well, everyone's ideology, or the dominant frame of the world right now, is going to be secular liberalism, right? And so I thought, why not add myself into the mix? Except, from my perspective, I'll be speaking from the Islamic paradigm. Not necessarily a representative in every case, but definitely that's what I'm grounded in terms of my morality, in terms of my worldview and outlook and perspective. So I thought that it's better to have more good stuff out there than everything else. Anyway, look, this is all just to say that I want to start uploading more regularly. This is bad timing because personally there's some stuff coming up that will make me unavailable for the next month. But essentially after that, hopefully I'll be able to just share my thoughts, speak about all sorts of different things, and yeah, so let's jump straight in. The title of this video will have something to do with the way of the samurai, which is what I want to discuss today. I'm reading the Hagakure. I have boom, there it is, the Hagakure, the Book of the Samurai. This is what I mean by on the fly. I can just add this stuff in. What's it about, really? What is it? It is this guy Yamamoto Tsunetomo, I believe 16th century, could be wrong. His basically a compilation of his sayings and other people's sayings and what he learned throughout his life that comprises the main sort of thought of the samurai, what they believed in. And yeah, I'm reading at the moment, and so ideas pop into my head. I want to discuss, so let's jump straight in. What is it all really about? I'm not fully through the book yet, but I just want to share my thoughts so far. I'm about halfway through, and the intro, the author actually opens with an intro that speaks about the history a little bit of Yamamoto, as well as shows different components to the way of the samurai, right? What is their belief system, whatever else. And so you have the three that is outlined in the intro is Bushido, Confucianism, and we have Zen Buddhism. So these are the three main components. Now, let me just actually get up. Oh, something here. Boom. Yeah. Okay, so paint is going to be my go-to for a lot of this stuff. So if we have the main two I want to focus on is Confucianism. Am I spelling that right? Probably not. We can get rid of this in the edit. I don't know if I'll edit this, but we'll see. Confucianism, and then Zen Buddhism. Okay, cool. Zen Buddhism. Now, what are these two things, and what are they talking about? So Confucianism, and again, this is a very brief overview. I'm not an expert on any of this, but I'm just sharing my thoughts of what I've read so far. I'll read out a little bit from the book here. So, although the ideal of the warrior scholar preceded the advent of Confucianism, Chongni, whom we now know as Confucius, and his followers adopted it as their own. Thus, it was already a very developed model when Chinese studies, including Confucianism, Taoism, and Yin-Yang philosophy, entered Japan in the 5th and 6th centuries CE. Indeed, Confucianism, with its ideals of courage, loyalty, and sincerity, was a mainstay of the Japanese samurai, at least from the 12th century. So let's skip away over here. And so it is important to note that the Japanese chew loyalty has another pronunciation, magokoro, which means sincerity, literally, absolute heart/mind. Yet another word for sincerity is makoto, the etymology of which indicates a condition of words becoming facts, hence the words and concepts of loyalty and sincerity often overlap and lose any distinction. What makes this a radical concept is the Confucian concept that in sincerity is the completion of all things. So that's really what it's all about, you know? Insincerity, down here. Insincerity is the completion of all things. Completion. My typing needs some work, as it seems. So this is really the one of the main sort of pillars, right, in Confucianism. So we have this hyper focus on sincerity and loyalty. That's on one side, okay? Who is this sincerity and who is this loyalty focused upon? It's going to be focused on the master of who that is. So again, within the context of the samurai, if you are, you know, you have a master who's you're the samurai of, you're protecting his property, you're working for him. He says jump, you say how high. This is the person you're going to have that sincerity and loyalty to. Okay. Now, Zen Buddhism. What's a major component of Zen Buddhism? And that's going to be, and I'll read out this quote as well. Buddhism brings the good news that such a self does not really exist, or that it has no reality of its own. It is simply an illusion fed by memory, culture, and the five senses. Okay. And in Zen literature, this state is described in this way. The blue mountains from the beginning do not move. The white clouds of themselves come and go. Like the blue mountains, nothing can move us. We cannot be startled or frightened in this state. What is there to fear? Like the white clouds, we can come and go as we please. In such a condition, what is there to hinder us? This is the substance of the Hagakure and the meaning of its most famous but least understood passage. The way of the samurai is found in death. If by setting one's heart right every morning and evening one is able to live as though his body were already dead, he gains freedom in the way. His whole life will be without blame and he will succeed in his calling. But this requires courage as well as concentration, for after the ego is gone, one finds that the self no longer exists and one has died what Zen calls the great death, Daishi. With that death, though, we have at last become free. In Zen literature, yes, I already described that part. Okay, so the lack of a self, no self. There is no self, okay? The self must die. In order to truly be of service, you have to forget about the self. It's, you know, the destruction of the ego. These are, I would say, two of the main concepts that stood out to me in terms of, you know, the way of the samurai. The way of the samurai. There we go. I mean, for my first video that I'm just doing on the fly, it's alright, right guys? I mean, yeah, anyway. So when we put these two things together, okay, this is sort of the point I wanted to make. You have this idea of total focus of sincerity and loyalty to the master, and you've destroyed your own ego. This is pretty much the ideal of the samurai, meaning that you're willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of your master, right? We can move forward, I think, with this. Oh my god. What am I doing? Here we go. That's one part. If we are to then go here, I want to read out another quote, okay? And so we've described two of the main components that informs the way of the samurai. And one of my favorite quotes is among the maxims on Lord Nashige's, my pronunciation is probably awful, wall, there was this one. Matters of great concern should be treated lightly, and Master Ite commented, matters of small concern should be treated seriously. Among one's affairs, there should be not more than 2 or 3 matters of what one could call great concern. If these are deliberated upon during ordinary times, they can be understood thinking about things previously and then handling them lightly. When the time comes, it is what this is all about. To face an event and solve it lightly is difficult if you're not resolved beforehand, and there will always be uncertainty in hitting your mark. However, if the foundation is laid previously, you can think of the saying matters of great concern should be treated lightly as your own basis of action. And let me write down that quote. Here we are. Matters of great concern should be treated lightly. Matters of small concern should be treated. What was that quote? Seriously. Right. That's, yeah, okay. So this is in chapter 1. And again, I'm just sort of highlighting things that stood out to me. This, to me, shows me the contemplative nature of the samurai. What do I mean by this? I mean that they are consistently thinking about what the 2 or 3 main great concerns. What could this be? This could be dying for their cause, for their master, etc., etc. It could be if they've done something that has tarnished their honor, then ritual suicide was huge in their culture. So if all that thinking and that contemplation was done beforehand, then when the matter came where they had to actually draw the sword, where they had to actually fight for the sake of their master or even commit seppuku. So they've done all that contemplation beforehand, and so by the time the matter of great concern comes to light, what happens? They're ready and they are willing to do whatever it takes. Okay, but with small things, things that occur on a regular basis, they are going to take their time with them, right? And you can see this within like even their ritual tea ceremonies and stuff like this. A lot of great care and thought is to put into every single action of all these small little things. Whereas with great matters of great concern, they're going to jump in, they're going to just do the work. I found that very interesting. Now, to move on from this, I wanted to bring this into a close by discussing how this relates to modernity and to Islam. You know what I mean? So I think the best way is to just get rid of all this. And we start with this, yeah? The way of the samurai. Boom. On one side, have Islam here, and we'll have modernity, or let's say liberalism. Okay, within each of these, divide these up in the most lame ways possible. I mean, who knows if I'll even upload this, but we'll see. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. The way of the samurai, Islam, and liberalism. At the most basic level, what can we understand from the way of the samurai? I would say, from what I've read, the sincerity, the loyalty, everything we discuss in terms of Confucius thought, joined with the absolute lack of self, yes, means that you've totally given yourself to loyalty and almost, I would say, even worship of your master. Okay, that's where your allegiance lies. Worship of master, because there's no higher power within this. It's your master who you're doing everything for. You live and you die for the sake of your master, and that could be you know, i.e. the shogun, you know, or what's it called, whoever the local leader is. Okay, shogun being the military ruler of Japan. Within Islam, worship of Allah, this is the core. This is what we call tawheed, right? That's the core principle of Islam. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. There is no God except Allah, and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his messenger. And then liberalism, very simply, is worship of desire. Do what you want as long as you don't hurt anyone. Intrinsically within that is this worship of desire, right? Like this is what really informs all your decision making, is what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? To put it another way, the way of the samurai, what does my master want? In Islam, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want from me? And liberalism, what do I want? Okay? Sort of almost like worship of yourself. Could be worship of the self, okay? The way of the samurai, no self. There is no self. Islam, what does Islam teach us about the self? Okay, well, self in Islam equals nafs, right? Nafs, your nafs, your self, your desires. No, we don't have no self. Okay, so this is why Islam, subhanAllah, is sort of like the middle ground, and you can see this from one sort of extreme to the other. Islam's right in the middle. It says you need to discipline the self. Okay, so you don't need to destroy the self. You can still retain your own identity and your own ego to an extent, but you need to discipline it. Okay, so we have things like Ramadan. Yes, we have our salat, like our prayer 5 times a day. Ramadan being the month of fasting once a year, in which we have to discipline our nafs, our self, our desires, in which we must abstain from, you know, food, water, a whole number of things. And in terms of our salat, in terms of our prayers, we need to do that 5 times a day. You know, these sort of things. So there's a discipline of the self. Okay. Now liberalism, it's just, I would say, a worship of the self. Okay, so if this is the case, the point that I want to discuss now is these are sort of like, if we're to take like one sort of core ideal value belief from each of these ideologies. Now I want to see, how does this behavior, or sorry, how does this belief system translate to the behavior of people who subscribe to these different ideologies? So within the way of the samurai, there was an interesting story that I heard of a Japanese engineer during World War II. This is before there were atomic bombs, so they still sort of held on to this way of the samurai, I would say, to some extent. And he was an engineer. He told them, put me in the submarine, because he was working on developing submarines, and I have confidence that the submarine is going to be work, whatever else. Put me under for 30 minutes in the submarine, and because he wanted to test it himself. He didn't want others to go ahead of him, and this was part of that idea of, like, you know, this sacrifice, this willingness to give oneself away. And it's scary, like you're being put underwater or whatever else. What happens is he's put underwater. Turns out there's a fault with the submarine. It starts to fill with water, and he knows that he's going to drown before they bring him back up. There's no communication with the outside world. And what does he do? Okay, what would you do in that situation? You have to think about this. Okay, and this is what I'm talking about, this translation of the belief into behavior, into, you know, these day-to-day actions or whatever else. They find him when they open up the submarine. It's filled with water, and they find him. He's obviously drowned at that point. But what did they find? You know, scratched into one of the parts of the submarine. They find that this engineer, with the last amount of life that he has left, draws onto the side of the submarine the solution for why there was an issue with the submarine, why there was a crack, why there was this, you know, entrance of all this water and stuff into the submarine. And so you can see that, you know, he sets the panic, he sets the, you know, what's going through his head, the water's coming in, you're about to drown, you're getting claustrophobic, all these sort of things. He puts all his fear to the side. For what purpose? To serve the Emperor of Japan and for the greater good of the nation, whatever else. This is what he ends up doing, right? And so it gives you a good idea of how this behavior translates, or sorry, this belief translates into giving him that conviction that he requires and that he needs. Okay, so we'll use that example of the Japanese submarine engineer. Okay, so that's how it translates. This is how, I mean, what are we even doing here, folks? Here we go. Boom. Within Islam, let's use an example here. The discipline of the self. Yeah. Very simply, we can say, we'll use Ramadan as an example. Like whenever we're fasting, Ramadan, i.e. fasting, what are we doing during this time? Abstain from, if you're married, relations with your wife, food, water, these sort of things, right? The concept of discipline is very strong in Islam. It's something that we all need to have. Why? Because although you are allowed to have some level of enjoyment of pleasure and stuff like this, that is totally secondary to your responsibilities. Your responsibilities to your, you know, your own body. You have responsibilities towards it, so you can't just go and ruin it by doing all sorts of drugs and this and whatever else is not allowed. Responsibilities to your family, taking care of them, etc., etc. Responsibilities to your community, giving back to whatever capacity you can. Responsibilities to the ummah at large, right? The nation of Muslims that exists around the world. You have responsibilities to all these, and ultimately the greatest responsibility, which is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And all of those other things feed into your responsibilities and your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those responsibilities come at the sacrifice of the self, okay? So you have time for yourself, but you have to prioritize other things that are more important. Ramadan being one of them. So that's a good example of that. And liberalism. What really can we say? What's a good example of the worship of the self? This one I'm going to leave open. All right. This one, actually, really, I'd like you guys to do the homework here. The worship of the self. I want you guys to look around. Like, what do you see around you? I think society at large, within the West, at least within the West, definitely really exemplifies the worship of the self, the worship of desire. You could literally look at, you know, Instagram as a shrine to the self. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like the idea of constantly, totally worshiping yourself. You know, you're the only one that needs to be. You're the one that needs to be taken care of. You're the one who you must obey, etc., etc. This sort of enslavement to the concept of freedom. Pretty deep stuff. You know, pretty deep stuff. Yeah, this is what I would say about liberalism, right? If I was to compare all these three, the way of the samurai, Islam, liberalism, this is how I would sort of break it down in terms of the core beliefs, the core sort of belief, you know. So I think that is it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I don't know, will this even reach anyone? Will anyone actually look at this? But we've been reviewing the Hagakure. That's all I got for you today. If you're watching, this is gonna be my first time saying this, but like and subscribe. Share with your friends if you found anything interesting from this. And I have no idea when I'll upload again. I really don't, because there's moving parts. Everything's changing. What's going on? Who knows? So yeah, comment below as well on your thoughts of what I said about the Hagakure. Have you guys read it? Has anyone read it here? And did I get anything wrong? Did I get anything right? Was there anything that sort of piqued your interest? What I'm really trying to do with these videos, guys, is just get you to start questioning. I want you guys to really introspect on your own beliefs. And I guess the last thing I'd leave you with is, what are your beliefs, and are your behaviors, you know, a good reflection of your beliefs? Very simply. So if you are a Muslim, does your behavior on a day-to-day basis, in how you interact with the world, your mother, your community, everything, is that a reflection of your beliefs? Similarly, if you're an atheist, a secularist, a liberal, etc., does what you do on a regular basis reflect that? Okay, and I would say for a lot of people, because that would be the dominant frame of the world, the secular liberal sort of ideology, and so a lot of people, even Muslims, Christians, Jews included, would a lot of their behaviors would be a reflection of that to an extent, not necessarily fully, but definitely to an extent with Muslims as well. And so just ask yourself, to what extent do my behaviors reflect my actual ideology that I believe in? But anyway, that's it from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, blah 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 blah, and I will see you next time. Don't know when that is, but hopefully soon. Hopefully soon. Yeah, let me know what you think.